that lately, some of you have been a little out of sorts. Erratic, unreliable, downright sloppy. Not you, Noir. You've been great.
So, The Gathering Storm is the 12th book in the Wheel of Time. We are reaching closer and closer to the end, and I read Sanderson's foreword in this, and he kind of explains what the process was for him getting this position. And this was Sanderson quite early in his career, right? He wasn't the household name that he is today. He essentially explains the process of how Robert Jordan had extensive notes, and he's spoken a lot about what happens in the series to his assistants, to his wife, to multiple people within his close circle. Brandon Sanderson himself has said that for this book, rather than trying to replicate Jordan's writing style, he's just going to incorporate his own style, but it's still Robert Jordan's story, right? If I had to nitpick some parts here and there, there's like a specific section within one of Matt's chapters. So it's no spoilers or anything. This is still the spoiler-free section. But there's this part where Matt's telling like a story to Talmains, or not a story, but he's talking about women to Talmains, right? And he goes on this long tangent or whatnot, and it felt slightly out of character. I felt like Matt, in certain points, just once or twice, I was like, this feels kind of out of character. But otherwise, all the characters are the same. Like Rand is Rand, Nynaeve is Nynaeve. They just read like they normally used to. This is Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, and this was something I was a little worried about, but after reading The Gathering Storm, not an issue at all. What I especially loved about The Gathering Storm is how much this feels like the first act of a grand finale. So the way that this is set out to be is that the last 3 books are kind of the finale, and each one is 1/3 of that. So Gathering Storm is like the first act, and Towers of Midnight is the second act, and A Memory of Light is the grand finale, right? And this does feel like the first act in all the right ways. What was also really great about The Gathering Storm is the ever looming presence and this darkness that is slowly unfolding the world. I truly get a sense that the world is about to come to an end. Like, I truly get a sense that the apocalypse is about to come. Like, Tarmon Gaiden is right around the corner, and there's this looming presence above everyone. Dread amongst everything, crops are not growing, freaking people are like vomiting beetles out of their mouth, and like rooms and corridors are switching around, some real sugar, some real stuff like is happening right now. And when I was reading it, I posted on Twitter, I was like, what if the Dark One is actually Jim Halpert throwing a bunch of pranks just to annoy Dwight Schrute, and that Tarmon Gaiden is some elaborate prank to annoy Dwight Schrute. Brandon Sanderson is actually the perfect person to really take up this after Robert Jordan, because Brandon Sanderson is familiar with creating this sense of dread with his Mistborn trilogy. Like the Hero of Ages especially does such a good job of really giving you a sense of that the world is about to come to an end, and this book does an amazing job of that as well. Like, it's called The Gathering Storm, right? It's all about this looming presence, all about the fact that this is the calm before the storm. And I really, really, this book does such an amazing job of it. This is one of those books that really lives up to its title. And yeah, for my spoiler-free reviews, I try not to go into specifics too much. I save that for later on, and I just give you my overall vibe of what I liked about this book. For in terms of pacing, pretty standard, pretty good. I think this was one of the better paced books. This is one of the upper tier books in general. The first half of this book is great. I liked it, but it like kind of slowly eases you into the real story, and then the second half is just insane, amazing. I loved the second half of this book. There are certain characters and chapters within the first half that feels very inconsequential. You got other characters like Rand and whatnot who are doing such interesting things, and some climactic shit is happening. And then when you go to a certain other character, it's like, yeah, the entire story for this book was just filled with inconsequential dialogue that could have been cut and could have shortened up the first half so we could really get to the second half much quicker, which is where the real story is at. But otherwise, this was a solid entry, and I am continuously and I'm just so excited to finally read the last two books. Alright, spoiler talk. I'm so excited for this spoiler talk. So I want to talk about the best character in this book, by far and away, the Dragon Reborn himself, Rand al'Thor. So Rand has been kind of a lighter presence for the past two books. He was barely in Crossroads of Twilight, and he was in a little bit of he was a presence in Knife of Dreams, but just not as much as you would expect from the Dragon Reborn. But Gathering Storm, Rand is back at the center of this story. He is back at the crux of this conflict, and my God, the stuff we get with Rand al'Thor in here, what we get with Rand al'Thor here is honestly some of the best stuff I've seen in fantasy recently. So with Rand, he's at some manor house. I forgot. He's in Arad Daman. He's trying to get the Damani under his belt of the United Nations. We know that Arad Daman, the king, has been like kidnapped by Grindal, right? So they are without leaders. It's quite just anarchy right there. So he's in Arad Daman. He's hanging out in some manor place. Min is there, Kadsan, Nynaeve, all the Aes Sedai, and Aviendha and the Aiel make their way over there as well. This is one thing I wanted to get across. I loved seeing Aviendha come back into the fold of things. I felt like she kind of was a lighter presence for ever since, the Lord of Chaos, right? So it's great to see POV chapters of her back. I love Aviendha. I love reading about this character. And, her stuff with the Wise Ones, and her punishment was actually her final test to becoming a Wise One. Well, the penultimate test before she has to go to Rudine again. This is all great stuff. I just, I don't know what's going to happen to Aviendha, although right now, right here, what we got of her was pretty decent. It didn't lead up to much. I would have liked to have seen an interaction with her and Rand, but, I digress. It was fine. Rand's in this manor house, right? Semiraj is a prisoner. I love that scene where Karasan, everyone's trying to break Semiraj. They're trying to get information out of her. She's like thousands of years old. She's not going to break. And Rand will not let them harm her because Rand has vowed not to kill or harm any women, just to keep that little morsel of humanity within himself, right? And Karasan finds a loophole and starts smacking her bottom, starts spanking her because if one way to really get through Semiraj is to really destroy her image. Later on, I forgot her name, but that Black Aja member and Shadar Haran do some stuff to get Semiraj out of prison and let her roam free with that male Adam. And we get that insane scene. Oh, before that, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. With Aviendha, we also get that awesome scene where that guy just turns into tar or something, and then the manor house explodes and burns up, and then she does her weaving and kind of sorts the situation out. Once again, every now and then within this book, we're getting some random occurrences, some stuff that is just out of this world, makes no sense because obviously it's the Dark One's touch within this world. I love how random and creative some of this stuff is. We'll get into some stuff later on because there are some like shenanigans that are just so bizarre and creative that I loved. But this is a good one. Now let's get to Semiraj. So Semiraj is free with the male Adam, and she tricks Rand al'Thor, straps him with the male Adam, and has complete control over the Dragon Reborn. And it's an intense chapter. It's insane. I'm flicking through these pages so fast. I need to find out what happens. And then she forces Rand to strangle Min. I was reading it. I was honestly thought Min was about to die. I was like, holy shit, this is getting insane. And then Rand just snaps. He takes hold of. Is it the true power? He's let go of all emotional attachments, and so he's achieved this greater being, and just no remorse, no nothing, breaks his rule, kills Semiraj, kills that Black Aja member, and he's just broken for the rest of this book. And the effect this has on him, so he just snaps. He sends Karasan away into exile because she was responsible for keeping his male Adam safe, and he just becomes ruthless. His aura is just grey. There's this like darkness that surrounds him, and he has no emotional attachments anymore. He's trying to cut that off because he knows that this emotional attachments he has with people he loves is what's holding him back, is what's holding him from seeing the world back. So he's let go of all of his moral codes, and he's not like he's unhinged. He's still Rand al'Thor, but he's like more Eren Yeager right now. Also, I do want to say I'm getting some major Eren Yeager vibes in Rand's arc. I ain't complaining because that's awesome. Eren Yeager's a fantastic character. I just love it when powerful characters like Rand delve further into the dark side. What I especially love about Randall Thor is that he's not like other Chosen One characters. With other Chosen One characters, it's like you are destined to save the world. You have been blessed with this great power, and you know they're super cool and stuff. But with Randall Thor, it's not like, oh yeah, you're destined to save the world. You're destined to fight the big dark bad lord, but you're also destined to kind of destroy the world. It's not cool being the Dragon Reborn, knowing that you're slowly going to go insane, and Randall Thor is a tortured soul, which makes him one of the most unique Chosen Ones I've read, and I really love it. This book single-handedly makes me less interested. This, like, honestly, if you think it's cool being a Chosen One, then read The Wheel of Time, because trust me, you do not want to be a Chosen One. You know, this series really delves deep into what it means being someone that the entire hope of the world rests upon, but also their greatest fears as well, and it takes a toll on him. You know, it's not just the power that's corrupting him, it's everything that comes along with it, the responsibility, the weight of the world. It all just crashes down on him, it breaks him, it's slowly eating him up inside and stripping away the youth that he used to be, the innocent youth that he used to be. And I finally understand why he was a inconsequential, normal sheep herder, right? Because it's truly meant to emphasize just how much of a toll this position takes on a person when a simple sheep herder like this can turn into someone who has into essentially what is a monster, right? And I really love it. This is a really great Chosen One trope. This is a really great use of the Chosen One trope, and I really, really love it. You know, and it really dissects what it means to be a Chosen One. You know, you have this destiny placed upon you, but you've never really had a choice to do anything in your life. You've never really had a choice to be who you want to be, and you are forced to save a world that you owe no debt to. And it's a really fascinating concept. And with the Semirage's confrontation, Rand has completely detached his emotional connections to this world, which directly conflicts with his desire to save the world in the first place. What's the point of saving a world you have no emotional investment in? And this is the central conflict within this book. In its own, it's an emotional conflict, and I loved it. This is so good. Ending for this book. It's not some big battle or whatnot. We get that with another character. I love the ending for this book because it does my favorite thing that I always love in stories. An introspective monologue that culminates in the character's entire arc. I love introspective monologues. They are some of my favorite things ever, especially when it culminates a character's entire character arc. You know, some of my favorite examples are Edward Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist and Kyon from The Disappearance of Ari Suzumiya. Two of my favorite fictional characters ever. And Rand also has a moment like this. So he's at Dragonmount. He has that dialogue himself with a Lews Therin, and he questions, why do this? What is the point of me even? What's the point of me losing myself to save the world? Why not just end it all here? Why not just break everything? You know, we constantly see him just lose himself. Like when he goes to confront Graendal, and he uses balefire and destroys that entire manor without no remorse for any of the servants in there. And I love how this was shown in Nynaeve's perspective, because from seeing it from an outside perspective adds so much more intensity, and you truly get a sense of how much Rand has changed. And he's just no longer the person he used to be, right? And then furthermore, when Kharasan gets Tamal forward to really bring the old Rand back, and he snaps on his own father as well, this is when he's crossed the border. You think there's no coming. Okay, so you can probably tell I look a little bit different, and I've obviously aged a lot. I'm joking. So, I was editing my Gathering Storm video because I filmed these and I edited these a long time before I eventually upload them. Most of the video footage got corrupted, so that's really frustrating because for these last three books especially, I really wanted to record them without having read the next one, so I can just my review is completely blind. Obviously I couldn't do that, and I struggled to find time. Right now I was meant to record right now. I was meant to record my Towers of Midnight review, but I'm gonna finish off the last half of my Gathering Storm video. So what I really want to talk about, which was Rand, I've already that footage is covered, so you'll see that. What I did want to say about Rand was that, yeah, so when he's on Dragonmount and he has that epiphany and he has that will again. He has that will to fight again and he finds the lights. He finds the balance between him and Lutheran and they kind of merge. And that was done really well. And what I especially loved was that he did it all by himself. There was no preachy speech given to him or anything. It was done by himself, which is what I love. I'm sorry I'm going to rush over this review because it's so frustrating that the footage got corrupted. But let's go over Nynaeve. So Nynaeve was part of Rand's story in this, and seeing Rand from Nynaeve's perspective really show you how detached he is from the rest of the world, and just the extent of his madness and the extent of his anger. Especially, that scene with Grendal's Manor when Rand destroyed it, and that was all in Nynaeve's perspective. All really great stuff. Obviously, Nynaeve has this almost paternal relationship with Rand, and seeing this from her perspective and seeing this metamorphosis Rand is going through really emphasizes just how much he's changed and is changing right now. Yeah, Nynaeve is just a character in general that I really slowly have gotten emotionally attached to. Like, the how much she's humbled herself since the beginning of the series. Remember in Eye of the World, she was just such a hot-headed character, and she still remains a lot of that spunk and a lot of that personality, but you can tell how much she's grown as a person, and she's still very assured of herself. She's still very proud of who she is, but she's still very she has been humbled. So Gwen is a very prominent character in here. She is currently held as a sort of prisoner in the White Tower, and she has been forced as a novice. And seeing her slowly but surely gain the respect of all the other novices and all the other Aes Sedai, including sitters, was handled perfectly. I loved Egwene's storyline in this book because it took its time. I believed that Egwene got through to Sylviana because of the amount of time it took, slowly seeing her, Sylviana being the mistress of novices and spanking her every day because, Elaine just, Gwen just elicits punishments all the time because of the way she acts and the disrespect she holds, and because she keeps acting like she is Amyrlin, which she rightfully is. So all these Aes Sedai that are slowly turning towards Gwen's favor, I buy that. It feels so natural. And eventually, when we get Tuan's perspective, that whole meeting with Rand just doesn't go according to plan. This is Rand at his worst, and Tuan is still Sinchan at heart, right? And after that meeting collapses, she commences war on the White Tower, and so the Sinchan invasion of the White Tower coincides perfectly with the climax of Gwen's arc. So Gwen confronts Aleida. We get that brutal scene where Aleida is just whipping Gwen about with the one power. Gwen is bleeding. The sitters are just telling Aleida that you are one crazy bitch. I mean, surely at that point, it's time to reinstate your Amyrlin, because if she's smacking around novices like that, she's definitely not right for this position. Of course, the Sinchan attack happens, and Gwen is the one who is leading the troops here. All the Aes Sedai are panicking. We're seeing Saldam are taking Aes Sedai as domain, and the whole tower is in chaos. Siuan hears about this, and she, against Gwen's wishes, goes with Gareth Bryant and Gon to go rescue Gwen because this is what she thinks is best. And then we see Gwen's perspective, and she's just leading the front over here. She teaches some of the novices how to channel in a circle so they can combine their powers. Or she's with Folkroot right now, so she doesn't have as much of the power as she should do. And by doing this circle, she is able to channel more of the one power than she normally could. She's weaving gateways. She's got that Ter Angariel. She's really heading this position right now. And so eventually, the Sinchan go away. That whole invasion of the White Tower was amazing. I loved it. And Gwen is drawn out. She's tired. She's knocked out. And that's when Gon and Siuan eventually get to her. Gwen can't protest because she's just basically unconscious at this point, and against her wishes, the rebel Aes Sedai take her back. And this leads into some real complications because Gwen was so close from winning support from the White Tower, and if she just stayed there just a little bit, she was certain that she could have really turned them around. And so she's kind of angry at the rebel Aes Sedai for making this decision on her behalf. But obviously, eventually, Aleda gets kidnapped by the Sinchans. There is no Amryn, and now there is a hole. And obviously, the sitters have never really been the biggest fans of Aleda, and there was so much division within all the other Arjas. So even they acknowledge the best course of action would be to get a Gwen, someone who was never even raised to a specific Arja. So we see the rebel Aes Sedai and the White Tower eventually come back together. It's what I do like about this. It's not all happy days and everyone's friends with each other. It's still a lot of hostility, and Gwen tries to remedy this by reinstating Sylviana, who eventually turned into a supporter of Gwen, and promoted Sylviana as her keeper. And I love that new bond there, that new relationship. It's a very smart, very political maneuver because Sylviana is Red Arja, and that is the Arja she would know would be the most hostile towards her in the tower. So by doing this, she's got a good word from the Red. All of this handled very well. I loved Gwen's entire storyline in this book. It was one of the standouts. And the whole Aes Sedai civil war, that entire storyline was just from beginning to end, from the shadows rising from when it started to here now. It felt so natural. The progression was natural. I just really enjoyed this entire storyline. Let's talk about some of the other characters quickly. I want to get this done quickly. Perrin, he's not in this much. We're seeing kind of the after effects of the Shadow storyline. I kind of like how Phil and his relationship isn't how it used to be. It's still very strange to be together now, since for the longest time their goal was to get back to each other. Now that they have that, it's strange, you know? And I like how they still feel the aftershocks of having gone through all of this, and it's going to take time for them to get back to normal. That stuff is fine. The parent wasn't in this book that much. Matt also, what we're seeing here right now is he's journeying to Camlin right now. Yeah, it's just filler for until he gets to Camlin. But it's pretty good filler. I love that Hinderstap section where we go into this village. I think it's called Hinderstap. I think that's what it is. And obviously the Dark One's powers touching the world. And this village is been cursed by the Dark One, by Tarmogoyf itself. And essentially, it's kind of a village of zombies. So whenever I think it's like full moon or like sunlight goes down, the whole village turns into into a bunch of raging zombies that just attack each other. And the village, when Matt was there during daylight, they were like, "Yo, you need to get out of here before the sun goes down." He's using his luck, winning money and stuff. He's trying to get supplies for the band, and they're like, "Yo, dude, you need to get out of this freaking village." And once sunlight goes down, it's like it's a zombie apocalypse. These people are just ripping each other apart. They're just attacking Matt. It's a badass fight scene. I love it because all the other three Aes Sedai with them, Teslin, Jocelyn, and whatever the other one was it Idara or something, and it's stunned, I think. And man, I loved the whole Hinderstep section. There was some real gothic horror vibes from it. And when this all goes down, the village, everyone they killed, is back alive again. And this is a curse. They are kind of immortal, but every time sun goes down, they kill someone. And if you die in this village, you're stuck in there forever. You're part of this curse. No matter if you travel like 100 miles away, when the sun comes back up, you got to come back to this village. Like, just the concept of that is so awesome. That can fit in a really cool Twilight Zone episode or something. I really love kind of just these episodic mini side adventures within the stories like this. So that was awesome. Eventually, Matt runs into Varen, and we haven't seen Varen for a long time. And Varen, it was one of those people who's always been at the forefront of the story, but also in the background as well. She's so mysterious, but she was always there. She was there to give Egwene the Te Angreal ring. She was there when Perrin and was in Emond's Field with the Trolloc invasion. She was there in the Great Hunt when she met up with the Shionarans who were hunting for the Horn. she's always been there, but you don't know who she is about. She's always been such a mysterious character. And here she is with Matt Cawthon to give him a letter, and she's acting really shady. So Matt's quite hesitant to open this letter, and she's like, when you get to Camden, open it. And they make some deal so that if she doesn't return, and after a certain number of days, and if she's dead, then he has to open it. After a certain amount of time, he doesn't have to open it because he doesn't want to be in debt to an Aes Sedai, especially right now because he's making plans to go to the tower. Essentially, what it was is that this is something that's crazy because the whole Taraveran energy thing, I always thought that because Rand is the Dragon Reborn, so his Taraveran energy is super powerful. Like every time he goes somewhere, like reality alters around him. Weird stuff happens. Unlikely stuff happens. In Perrin and Matt's Taraveran energy is much more subtle. Like destiny lulls them towards this way, or they meet this person, like Perrin meeting Morghese. Not a coincidence when it comes to Taraveran, it's kind of like destiny. But we don't see the kind of reality altering stuff that we see around. The closest I would say is Matt's luck. But here we get Varen pretty much telling Matt that his Taraveran energy is more powerful than we expected because she was forced to meet him. Every time she wanted to go somewhere, some event would happen, a house would burn down, forcing her to move closer towards Matt. Her gateways wouldn't work or something. Just real reality altering stuff. And that is insane because that's almost Rand levels of Taraveran energy. So whatever, so Varen meeting Matt is like a really important event. The pattern is willing it so. And that's just so fascinating. I want to learn so much more about this Taraveran stuff. And speaking of Varen, she meets up in a Gwen storyline. This was during the Sinchan invasion. And man, I've got to say, Varen surprised me in this book. This is one of my favorite moments just because of the emotional impact it had. So we find out what Varen is. Varen is Black Arja, but she's not evil. She's not a dark friend. She's just someone who is part of the Black Arja, who's kind of been coerced into it. But as a Brown, she was more interested in acting as kind of a double agent, someone who is within the belly of the beast, finding out information that could be useful to the other side. And through some loopholes, she is able to give Gwen a book with all the names of all the Black Arja members. And finding out that is such an important part and an important shift within this war against the Shadow, and seeing Varen's part in this and what she had to go through to get just this vital information, I loved it. I love characters who make a sacrifice to better a world that they know they'll never eventually see. I would use examples, but then there would be spoilers for other stuff. But you see this in a lot, a specific character in Attack on Titan does this, and I love it. And I love characters like this, having to go through this really torturous path in order to see, for a future that they won't see. And man, Varen's just that revelation, her death scene, it really got me emotional. I didn't expect Varen, of all people, to get me this emotional, but it was handled beautifully. And I loved what Jordan/Sanderson did with Varen in this book and in the series in general. If I ever revisit this story, I know I'm gonna have a completely new outlook and a completely new view of Varen. We don't get much interludes. We get stuff with Tuan and some of the Forsaken. We see Moradin, who's kind of really upset with some of the other Forsaken and how they acted, specifically Semiraj and what she did to Rand. All that traumatic stuff that occurred. And he points Graendal as well to hunt, I think, Perrin or something. So we get some stuff here and there. Overall, not as much interludes as we would normally get. The first part of the Gathering Storm is quite slow here and there, but once we move out of that manor location, it gets moving, and when it gets moving, it's awesome. Rand, his arc in this book is one of the best things we've gotten in the Wheel of Time. This was his book, absolutely. He's the standout character. Loved every minute of it, and yeah, I really enjoyed The Gathering Storm. There was some, chapters in there at the beginning that was just mostly inconsequential dialogue and not much there. But when it gets going, when that whole confrontation with Semiraj and Rand happens, from there on, it just gets more and more intriguing. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This is a solid 8 out of 10. I'm not on the upper echelons of Wheel of Time. It's not up there with The Shadows Rising or something. But I really enjoyed this book. This was great, and I'm so excited to read the finale of this series.